Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to our session today on building a winning sales tech stack for your staffing firm. I'm Maurice Fuller with Staffing Tech, and I'll be moderating this panel discussion. So sales technology has come a long way over the past decade, and a modern sales tech stack is absolutely essential to running a predictable and efficient sales organization in today's staffing industry. In this session, we'll be examining how is technology changing the sales process. Number two, how do we align our sales tech stacks with your firm's go-to-market strategy and the market segments that you're serving? How do you select the best sales technology solutions for your staffing firm? How is marketing's evolving role playing in with the sales process? And then what are the 6 key components of the modern sales tech stack for sales firms? So we'll be going into all of these areas in great detail. We have a fantastic group of panelists with us today. Newly appointed AirSwift CRO Anna Frazzetto, Allied Insight founder Jeff Policio, WinSource Group CEO Mark Winter, and recently appointed U.S. Tech Solutions Chief Operating Officer Scott Eicher. If you have any questions along the way, please put them into the chat. We'll address that at the very end of the presentation. There's really 3 parts to this presentation today. The first part is sales technology and today's sales process. The second part is the 6 components of the modern sales tech stack. And the third is our Q&A at the very end. So let's get started with our first question. Actually, I'd like to do some introductions, have everyone on the panel introduce themselves. Anna, could you start by introducing yourself to everyone in the audience?
Sure, terrific. Thank you so much, Morris, for this panel. I think 2 things that I'm passionate about is technology and sales. So it's a perfect marriage. I'm Anna Frazzetto. I'm the Global Chief Revenue Officer for AirSwift. And as you said, newly appointed, this is my 2nd week on the job.
Fantastic, and congratulations on your new role. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at Allied Insight.
Sure, and thanks for putting this together and inviting me to be a part of such a great panel. Jeff Policio, I'm the founder of Allied Insight. We're a full stack marketing agency, and I'm also a bald buddy to a very close friend who is going through chemo. So if you notice a different in the locks today, that's what that is, but still the same goofy glasses. So
still can't hear
really
anything.
Looking forward to this conversation.
Strange.
Okay, fantastic. Mark, tell us about yourself and your business.
Sure. So Mark Winter, WinSource Group, 24-year staffing veteran, started as a field guy many years ago in industrial staffing. After 20 years or so in the direct staffing business, I put on my own for some consulting. So now I do consulting, training, process work. Technology is a necessary part of all of that. So that's how I got involved in this. So thanks for having us, Maurice. And by the way, Maurice, there's a note in the chat that says right at the bottom of your screen, there's a picture of a screen with a line through it. If you click that, you'll be able to share your slides.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, that is working now. So window, here we go. Okay, great.
And
here we are.
Still having
fantastic. Okay. Excellent. Okay, Scott has been in and out. So I'll quickly introduce Scott on his behalf. Scott's a industry veteran. He's been in this industry for a long time, both heading up technology firms and staffing firms, very large firms in a COO role. He has run large sales organizations and large recruiting organizations, onshore, offshore, highly experienced in the sales area. So hopefully he can join us. And I'm Maurice Fuller, founder of Staffing Tech. I'm passionate about helping staffing firms grow faster and operate more efficiently by modernizing their tech stack. So I work with staffing firms to update their components of their sales technology to streamline operations. All right, let's move on to our first question. We've seen a lot of changes in sales technology over recent years. So Anna, what are your thoughts on how technology is changing the sales process today?
That's a great question, Morris. I have to say, I think what's happening in sales is it reflects the evolution of the buyer, right? Buyers don't waste time. right? We as sales professionals, we need to be armed with accurate data and facts, personalized data, right? So that you can illustrate that you're a subject matter expert in the field, right? That you understand the client's pain point. That's only accomplished through technology. So we've moved on from the days of traditional cold calling, right? Aimlessly sitting through lists. I remember these days, unfortunately, sitting through a list, hoping that something would stick. We now need data, right? How do we get this data? Well, we have to use research tools, and some of the great tools that are out there that I know that I've used and I enjoy utilizing: LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, and Insights. There's also Zoom Info. I think some of the other technology that you see that's impacting the sales cycle is HubSpot. The fact that you can do sequences, which is a personalized approach that you can reach not only hundreds but thousands, and it appears not as a mass email that's going out, but it's kind of that personalized touch. So I have to say that this is like the evolution, and quite frankly, maybe even a little bit of a revolution in the industry, that things have flipped for the better. Now, when you couple this to the sales process and the staffing industry, in particular, where speed to getting to the client first, right? Speed to getting to the candidate first, it becomes even a more critical component. I have to say, investing in marketing and having marketing play a role in being able to target different markets or being able to position new service offerings, marketing can help you throughout this entire process. So for example, I mentioned the sequencing in HubSpot. Marketing can play a role in helping in the lead generation efforts. So again, that's my plug for sales and marketing and technology.
All right.
Right on.
And that was a fantastic introduction to a lot of the topics that we're going to be covering today. Let's move on to the next topic, which is aligning sales technology with staffing firm strategy and market segments. And Scott, I know you have some views on this. Are you able to?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you just great. Yes. So you're
right. On. Technology, it's a double-edged sword at times, as we're talking about here today. I appreciate everyone's patience. Really excited to be here, Maurice. I know I didn't get a chance to do a brief introduction, but again, Scott Eicher here with Chief Operating Officer of US Tech Solutions. We are one of the industry's largest diversity-owned staffing firms with basically a footprint in all major global markets. Excited to be part of this panel. I've been in the industry a long time, about 30 years now, and I see a lot of my colleagues have been in this industry, this crazy industry we love for many years as well. So excited to be part of this. So back to your question though, Maurice, from a high level, I don't think it can be underscored just the term strategy as it relates to planning with all of this. The key components to really looking at a tech stack when you're aligning this to any type of sales technology and sales process, really understand your entire methodology that you're going to be rolling out from a sales positioning standpoint. And I think that's where everything begins. Depending upon the size and scope that you are as an organization, you have different maturation processes. If you're a firm that's 25 million or below or $1 billion and above, they're very different strategies and structures, but all of them should all start with what is that strategy and what is that overall market segment that we want to go after and the type of blend. So your technology's got to support those. If you're a smaller based firm, you really want to make sure you've got a tool that's going to align to helping the process through, because your ability to mentor and manage those sales teams is going to be a lot more limited than the large organizations. Because having been an entrepreneur myself, sometimes it's a whole discussion of luxury versus necessity. And sometimes that comes into play here when you're looking at technology. So I think it all begins there. And when you look at market segments, that can't be pulled out of the mix either. If you're looking at niches or you're looking at geographies, or if you're global, the technology has got to be able to scale to those things as well. So I think it always begins from a standpoint, what is your strategy? Develop your strategy and either customize your own, have a tool that can be augmented to what you want to design in terms of what you're asking your team to do, or adopt something that a tool may be able to bring to you that you can adopt as part of your pro forma and your organization. So that's where I always begin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
The thing that jumps out at me off of this slide is the word aligning. Maurice. So I think about a car that's out of alignment, how it kind of wobbles and knocks when you're driving. That's my wife's car because she hits curbs and stuff. But the same thing can happen to an organization. Technology is great when it works, when it's aligned to that firm's strategy and aligned to how your customers buy. When it's not, though, when it's wobbling, it can be a huge time suck. It can really cause some stress and strain on your sales force. So
yep,
that's my take.
All right, let's talk about selecting solutions. This is a tough area because there's just so much technology out there, and the tech stack, once we get into it, we'll just see how many different components and layers there are today. How should sales organizations who are not necessarily technical go about selecting the best components to build up their tech stacks? Back to you, Scott.
Well, I think, again, it begins based on where you are and where you want to be. You got to build for what your future state looks like. So I think your tech stack, number one, needs to be scalable as you look at this. So that you can always start out, and you're an entrepreneur, you can always start out the business with sort of that rudimentary tools to get you through the end of the day. But as you scale and grow, you got to plan for that growth. And I think, and as a larger organization, it's really a challenging element to it, because depending upon your footprint as an organization, you may actually have to pull in a couple different tools to really manage it based upon how you're aligned. Do you have a different process as it relates to the MSP VMS type of business that you may support, the retail type of business you may support, the type of business you may have in different geographies globally? So from a selection standpoint, you've got to take all those things into consideration. And when you look at it from a global tool, there's not as many to select from. So you may have to, per region, find some things that may adjust to that environment based upon the geography. So it's really it's not a one size fits all. So when we started talking about this topic as a whole, one of the things that I sit back on, it's really hard to have a broad swipe of saying, here are the best things for you to pull into your organization, because it's totally dependent upon where you are, where you're going, and the type of philosophies that you're implementing as a sales organization. So it's really tough to pinpoint, but you want to find something that can scale with where you're going as a business.
Got it. Anna, how do you select sales tools for your sales organizations?
Yeah, I think just to add on what Scott said, I agree. You have to look at scalability as a component of how you're trying to grow. Obviously, if you go with tools like I had mentioned, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and LinkedIn is very well known, right? If you look at tools like sequencing or Bullhorn, those are kind of like the big names in the industry that's going to work. But I have to say, I think it's also worth investing maybe in a little bit of analysis up front, where you have a consultant that comes in and takes a look at your environment and then is able to help you plan for the future. I almost view that it's kind of like when you have an architect and you're building a house, you're not going to just arbitrarily build a house. You have somebody come in and actually tell you, where do you want the bedrooms? Where do you want the bathrooms? Where do you want the kitchen? And that's a little bit of the analysis that has to take place. There's great consultants out there that offer this as a service. I would highly encourage that.
Well, thanks for plugging my services, Anna. So Jeff, what are your thoughts on selecting the best tools for sales?
Sure. So being on the marketing side of things, many times we end up in conversations about like how businesses are trying to grow, what it is that they're doing in order to be flexible, and how they're also bending with changing market conditions. I think there's a lot that we've learned over the last few years going into the pandemic. I think a lot of us raced in order to be able to reconfigure our structures in a very temporary fashion. And I think now what we've realized is very much so the environment that we live in today is not going anywhere. And so it's only going to continue to exacerbate and become more challenging. The demands and the requirements of candidates and employers are going to continue to increase as we go. And so what I think we need to make sure that we're looking at is that you're picking resources not to remedy in-house problems, but that you've already addressed what your changing business model will look like in order to fit into the existing market conditions, and then make sure that your technology can layer accordingly. Like, technology doesn't resolve process and people issues. Technology, if anything, is just going to make that worse. So my recommendation from a marketing perspective is it's good to have the tools that allow you to do the communication, but if you don't have structure in place beforehand and you don't have your people all kind of pointed in the same direction, then you'll likely not end up where you were trying to get to begin with.
Yeah, and let's build on what marketing that you mentioned just a moment ago. So marketing has become crucial to the success of sales. So can you tell us from a CMO standpoint about the evolving role of marketing in sales?
Of course. So it's really like most of the conversations I find myself in with executive teams at different staffing firms is more to do with like identifying where these gaps are and being able to illustrate why there's a need to do certain exercises. And I know I beat this to death many times, but like candidate and client journeys, they give you a lot. You guys, you earn so much by doing that exercise. Not only do you know how to position your company and create greater transparency, but you also create like training modules so that you can create predictive environments that like earn you the reputation that you're looking for. So yeah, I mean, from a CMO's perspective, like it can't be overstated, like working on your process to make sure that you are aligning with the market conditions is critically and crucially important if you want to get the most out of your technology as you can. Otherwise, automation isn't going to do what you think it's going to do, right? Like it's not going to work the way that you think. It'll just make things worse. So
yeah. Fantastic. I want to move on to the next topic, which is that as we layer on more and more technology, the cost of technology across all areas of the staffing industry is growing when you look at it on a per user basis. So Mark, what are your thoughts on the cost of sales technology and how should CFOs and COOs and EOs think about the increasing cost of technology in sales?
Sure. Yep. Maurice, I got to tell you though, I'm chomping at the bit on that last slide on the marketing one. Can I just throw one thing in there? I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. I'll make up the time somewhere else. That marketing piece is so instrumental in sales today because it's changed the place that we meet the buyer. So it used to be we met the buyer at 10%. They were 10% of the way through because they'd seen something that caused some interest. Now their statistics tell us they're more than 50 or 60% of the way through the buying process without us. So our job has shifted in the last several years, especially in staffing, where when we come up to a client and they immediately ask us for price, sometimes we think that they're price shopping. And while that may well be the case, it could also be that they're pretty well educated. What that's a result of is them being 60% of the way through the buying process. And now our job, instead of selling, becomes helping them navigate internal complexity and finishing out that sale. Right. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there. It's radically changed. The role of marketing and sales has dramatically changed.
Yeah, that is a hugely important point that you're making there. And so marketing has become a really critical element of the staffing firm today.
It is part of the sales process. Marketing is the tip of the spear in the sales process.
So we are going to talk a bit about the choreography of sales and marketing as they work together. Now going back into about cost.
Yeah, cost. So couple things on technology, and these are Markisms. These are rule of thumb. You won't find this in Gartner. Like I haven't modeled this out. So, but I encourage you to challenge me on this. When I talk to clients about what they should be spending on sales technology for sales reps, I usually say about 10% of their base salary. That's my rule of thumb, 10% of the base. So if you back into that, start thinking about Costa Bullhorn, Aviante, or whatever front-end system you use, and then you've got HubSpot for marketing, and then you've got Calendly and meeting tools. And by the time you're in, you're $5-6 grand easily on a salesperson. So if you're thoughtful about that, and sometimes a CEO or a leader will say, man, that feels like a lot of money. Yes, it is a lot of money per head. So then what you need to be thinking about is, am I spending that money in the right places on the best possible tools? And so that now becomes the conversation. And that's a much more powerful conversation than how much is this really costing us, right? Are we spending it in the right places? So that's my rule of thumb is about 10% on base. Here's another one. Another rule of thumb here is whenever I'm thinking about the cost of technology for my team, what the seat license cost is, I double it. So if you're thinking about a CRM system, for example, that's one that comes up often. You're thinking about dedicating to Salesforce or some other CRM system out there. There are add-ons and plugins and every other thing available that will make the system hum, as well as the cost of integrations and configuration. And so my rule of thumb is whatever the license is, double it, and that's usually a pretty safe bet. So that's how I go about budgeting for that sort of thing. And I look at it like when I hire a new person, that's just part of the cost of acquiring that new person.
Okay, that's a great rule of thumb. And those are great insights. Scott, do you want to weigh in on that from a CO perspective?
Well, yeah, I think I never heard that number there, Mark. I'm going to start using that myself in terms of looking at that 10 percentile. I think again, it all depends on the stage that you're in. If you're as a smaller organization, it's tougher than as you look at traditional budgeting processes as a large organization like ours. When we look at it, it all comes down to if we are more of a direct sales organization, the type of money we're going to spend for that may differ from elements that we may need to be automated if we're very MSP, VMS heavy, which have other elements to it that may lessen the need for the journey, the sales journey, the marketing journey, all those other aspects to it. So as far as a definitive number, it's one that I don't have top of mind, but I'm going to start using that one that Mark just outlined in terms of 10%. That seems pretty fair in terms of the high level.
And then going back to your earlier comment, really how much you spend depends on the markets you're going after and your firm strategy.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's always a moving target in these discussions, and we have a lot of different types of organizations. Also, it's about the niche you're in too. There are different aspects. Your business, if you're light industrial versus STEM versus other areas, that has a whole different sort of pro forma as you look at cost and what you're going to spend on the tools you're going to bring in, because it's very different. You have a lot of tools out there that can automate all kinds of aspects. And I know there are firms in the space today that try to automate upwards of 60, 70% of the process, but they're in a different niche, right? Sure. You go to the higher STEM skill sets, it's not as viable. So you've got to look at it from all angles.
All right, fantastic. All right, we're going to get into the section everybody's been looking forward to, which is really the nuts and bolts of sales technology components for running this business. So there's really 6 components or layers to the modern sales tech stack: engagement technologies, application technologies to sort of centralize a lot of activities, enablement technologies to enable sales reps to hit quota, operations technologies to streamline and manage operations, infrastructure technologies like Salesforce automation and integrations to support the sales process, and then data, and specifically third-party data for being able to target customers. So let's start with engagement technologies. These are some basic technologies that we rely upon for engaging with prospective customers. Anna, what are your thoughts on these basic technologies for engaging with customers?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty extensive list that you have there, and I think they all are applicable depending on the situation, the client, where they are in the process. But I think one of the ways that's been very effective, and actually COVID kind of brought us there with doing as much video conferencing that you can do to reach clients, right? If you think about it, I mean, before COVID, pretty much, I mean, I would walk around the office and like, why are you in the office? You should be out in front of a client. Like, why are you here? Kind of thing. But now the power of video conferencing, I think what it's accomplished, and also doing webinars and events to pull clients together, it's giving you a broader reach, right? So, and you also, I mean, even though there's 2 different philosophies where one of the thought processes, it's taken the fluffy part of the conversation. It's harder to develop a relationship when you're doing everything via video. But I have to tell you, I think that we've also learned how to do that, how to establish a relationship, even if it's a Zoom call. So I'm a big supporter of all of those components, and I think they all can apply. The one thing that I have not done is the whole e-gift. Like, I'll send you something if you call, but again, I think it depends what you're selling from a service perspective.
Okay, fantastic. Let's move on to the application layer.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I want to have you, Jeff, talk a little bit about marketing, and specifically marketing automations, which are integral to orchestrating a lot of the different activities that occurs. Marketing plays a really central role in this. What can you kind of speak to specific like marketing automations and that play a key role in the sales process today?
Sure. So marketing automation, like successful marketing automation, is going to come down to a handful of components. The first and foremost is going to be data cleanliness, right? Your data hygiene. If your database isn't clean, if your people are using the fields or misappropriating fields in order for them to sort of have their own notes in different sections, that causes major hiccups. Also, really comes in like how you can actually segment your audience. So making sure that you have means of being able to understand like who the individuals are beyond clients and candidates, but like the verticals that they're in, the industries that they're in, the types of jobs that they usually post, like how many offices they have, whether or not you may be doing cross-functional sales and doing multiple verticals. All of those things play a factor into how complex you can create your automation. The key to automation is one of two paths. Either A, say your automation, right? So that way you just come full out, you're transparent, you're being honest about it, you're authentic. This is automation. We're reaching out to you to make sure that you have this and this. Or if you want to come across human, then you need to make sure that you're very thoughtful and methodical in how you set these things up. So that way your trigger points and your workflows all work appropriately. They waterfall or cascade from one talk track to another, and that they don't overlap and that they have exits out. So automation also, I would say, like the most successes that I've seen for automated sequences in staffing have been with staffing-centric products. I think that there are some opportunities to be outside of our industry with other technologies, but it does require some time in to sort of manipulate those things. And I know that you mentioned like HubSpot earlier. HubSpot, I adore and love. I'm certified in their product, but many times it becomes challenging to try to operate with inside like the complexities of staffing. And to Mark's point earlier, where, you know, the conversation is really going much further along, you're trying to build this digital trust, right? That's the whole game here. Move that into a digital trust space, but know that it's fragile. So those are my 2 cents on automation.
Okay, fantastic. All right, in the spirit of time, I'm going to move on to the next layer of the sales tech stack, which is enablement. These are technologies that enable our sales reps to be successful. And so, Mark, I know you have some thoughts on these technologies.
Yeah, there were some sessions earlier today that kind of dug into sales training. Listen, the world of sales training's changed. The way people digest training or want to receive training is completely different. Having a 1-week sales training seminar, that's a thing of the past. Right? That's not going to happen anymore. Everything has to be delivered in small digestible bites. Hence, playbooks make a huge appearance on the scene. Playbooks are important because it gives real-time access to what should I do next. One of the things about whether it's content management or playbooks or sales training, one of the things that I've learned about staffing is when I have a question or when I need an answer to something, it's immediate. It's right now. I'm not going to go onto a system and look something up an hour from now and watch I need something right this second. So whatever it is, whatever you choose, thinking about like playbooks or content management, it's got to be accessible. And so it's got to be put in the hands of everybody that could potentially need it. And I would really focus on the train the trainer approach when it comes to leadership, because frankly, the biggest, easiest technology is the telephone. So when I have a question about a playbook, I'm going to pick up the phone and call my leader, my upline, or my mentor. And hopefully that person is really well trained in what's inside the playbook or the sales training for the organization. We could talk about this all day, but as far as systems, I would say there's a number of really good LMSs out there, but for some organizations that might be over-engineered. There's some platforms that you can buy into with monthly subscriptions or with seat licenses that will allow you to host or customize some training for your organization. So it really depends on the size of the organization where I'd go as far as platforms. But much of the sales content and training can be housed just on your local intranet or within your own systems.
Okay, fantastic. We need to move on to the next layer, which is operations. Scott, this is kind of your domain that you live in. What are your thoughts on the different technologies that support sales operations?
Well, I think one of the things that it comes down to, and it was touched on by Mark, I think this all circles back around, regardless of the technologies you use to manage any aspect of this tech stack that we're talking about today. It all begins with, I think it begins and ends with the leadership side of it and how you overall design your strategy with all your reps, leveraging the tools and managing the process. So you talk about in this specific slide, the breakdown between rev ops, sales ops, and all these are very important, but I think it all comes down to individualizing each one of the sort of plans as you work through with your reps, with your managers, and with your directors and VPs in terms of overall strategy and what you're looking for in terms of the output of a tool you're going to be leveraging from that end resource. So I think it all begins and ends with the leadership element. So for us, and as we look at kind of outlining our overall strategy as a business, it's going to all be individualized too by the role and the person. That's the other thing that gets lost in our industry is everyone kind of has this cookie cutter approach of let's follow this sales process, this method. And each person learns, and it was touched on, learns at very different paces. So I think as leaders, we got to take a step back and actually customize that approach with each individual and each tool we're asking them to use to show them how it fits into their daily routine, because those routines are very different. And for each person, it's going to be learned differently. So I think that's where it always begins and ends, because I think we get lost as an industry on the importance of mentorship, not training, not management, but true mentorship through this process. I think it gets lost. Before I came over here to US Tech Solutions, that's what I consulted on, a big portion of it, because most of our industry forgets that and just manages, does not mentor the process. And I think it begins even leveraging the tools that we have. And all these are key elements to successful businesses, but you really need to start and end with how you're going to manage those resources and mentor those resources through the process.
Those are great points, Scott. Mark, do you want to weigh in on this section?
No, I don't have anything else to add. That was pretty thorough. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. And Anna?
Yeah, the only thing that I would say with both enablement and operations is the fact of consistency, right? A lot of times I think people think in sales that you can wing it and kind of go with the flow, and that's the furthest from reality. It needs to be structured. It needs to have tight performance measures and tight processes around it. So that's all I'll say about that.
Okay, fantastic. Let's move on to the next piece, which is infrastructure. This is your CRM, Salesforce automation, and data. We're not talking about third-party data. We're talking about data within your system and also integrations within the organization, which I think is going to play an increasingly important role as we go more towards hyper automation within our industry and build data lakes and combine a lot of different data sources to generate value. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a comment earlier from Billy Davis, who said the number one requirement for tech stack regarding is integration into ATS CRM. And Billy, I'm with you. That made my heart beat there. So whatever data systems you're using, whatever CRM system you're using, the whole sales infrastructure, it's got to be connected, or it's going to be a potential burden, a handicap for your sales team. If they have to swivel chair from one system to another to get accurate data, you're slowing down the sales process, regardless of how high end your CRM system is. So, and this CRM in particular is where I drafted that idea of double your seat license cost. There are so many cool bells and whistles that will make a salesperson or sales leader's life easier with regard to CRM if we're willing to pay for them and make sure that they're up and running and work. So this is a place, CRM is it's not a sideline sport for executives. You've got to be down there on the field, helping make decisions and supporting the building of that infrastructure, because it's your customer data. There's nothing more important than that.
All right, let's move on to the next layer, the bottom layer, which is data, and specifically third-party data. There's so much data out there that we can acquire from companies like Zoom. What are your thoughts on data sources that we should be acquiring from third-party sources? And feel free to name third-party sources that you like. Let's start with Jeff.
Sure. So connectivity is key when it is that you want to be able to get access or visibility into your funnel. Obviously, like in being in the marketing side, we track a lot of things at the top of the funnel, but getting that stuff to move back into your ATS is really important. So connectivity back in is good. In terms of being able to curate information, I'll just speak to the top of the funnel because that's where I live. Things that are going to aggregate or curate all of that for you are going to be important. Those types of tools would be things like SEMRush, SpyFu, Moz Rank, that kind of stuff. The things where you can actually connect your Google Analytics, Google Search Console, social media, and so forth to see how the performance is trending overall. Otherwise, you'll spend a lot of time digging into each individual platform to try to make decisions and likely not have that aligned. So I'll stop there in an effort for getting your time back on track,
Yeah.
but that would be where I would live for some of those external analytic tools.
Any other thoughts on third-party data we should be acquiring, Mark, Anna, or Scott?
Go ahead.
Jeff nailed it.
Yeah.
Anna?
Jeff nailed it.
Okay.
I would say for data sources, as far as contact data and potentially intent, Zoom Info has been really good. Dun & Bradstreet is excellent. Lightcast for market analytics has been great, the former MC. So,
and I think everybody touched on all the keys there. One element that I think needs to be highlighted, we need to tell all of our sales organizations as we look at data is don't become sort of slaves to the data that you're looking at, because you can get very quickly paralysis by analysis. And if there's too much data coming in, I've seen it take sales reps down rabbit holes. So we need to make sure that what they look at is actionable information and how they go about actioning it.
If I could just make one more point too, Maurice,
Yeah,
I think that people tend to underutilize their ATS. You probably experience this more than most being in the digital stack sort of space, but if you don't have your ecosystem set up properly and you don't set up your ATS to deliver the information that you want, then you're missing out on huge swaths of data to understand what might be wrong in your process or what might be right in your process, right? We tend to talk about the negatives, but what's positive? So don't underestimate your ATS.
Yep, that's great advice. All right, we're very close to the end. Any final words? I'm just going to go through left to right. Mark, what are your thoughts? Final thoughts.
Great. The best technology supports the best process. Get your processes dialed in and find the right technology that makes everybody's job easy.
Anna?
I always go down to the basics. People, process, technology, they all have to be interlocked with each other.
And accountability. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
People, process, tech, absolutely. Like, don't put the shiny thing in place to remedy anything. It's not going to work.
Scott?
Yeah, without sounding redundant, everybody hit the nail on the head. One other aspect I would say is please, everybody, no matter how small it is, start out with what you really want your long-term strategy to be. Understand who you want to be before you start rolling all kinds of things out, because you'll find out you're going to trip over yourself too often. So start there as well.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, on this panel. It's just been really informative. Thank you to all the folks at the World Staffing Summit, Jan and Jakob, for everything you've done to produce this and to make it happen. And so we're very appreciative of that. So we've reached the end of our
Thanks, Maurice.
Take care.
Take care, folks.
All right, so long, everyone.